In the frozen ruins of Europe during World War II, Allied patrols reported something impossible. Entire German armored battalions, tanks and crews appearing out of the mist, firing without sound, and vanishing before impact. Soldiers swore they weren't fighting men, but shadows of the dead. This is the chilling tale of the Phantom Tank Battalion. Our story begins in the bitter winter of 1945, deep in the Ardennes forest. The war was turning, yet the land remained haunted by fire and steel. Captain Richard Harlow and his small reconnaissance patrol were ordered into the fog to investigate reports of German armor. What they discovered was not an army of men, but something that should not exist. The Ardennes forest in winter was a place of silence and suspicion. Every branch sagged with ice, every trail was half swallowed by snow and churned mud, and every breath of wind seemed to carry the memory of gunfire. It was early 1945, and though the great German offensive had been blunted, the woods remained hostile, filled with rumors of armored columns slipping through the fog. Captain Richard Harlow adjusted the strap of his helmet as he peered into the grey haze. He led a small British reconnaissance patrol, reinforced with a few Americans for liaison. His boots crunched in frost as he signaled the column forward. Somewhere in these woods, according to scattered reports, German tanks had been sighted moving where no tanks could be. Harlow didn't believe in rumors. He believed in tracks, in evidence, in orders. Still, the fog unsettled him. It lay thick between the trees like smoke from a battle that had never ended. Behind him, Sergeant William McIntyre muttered under his breath. The Scot, Stitt's broad shoulders hunched beneath his greatcoat, his rifle slung tight. "Feels wrong, sir. Mist this thick. It doesn't Stitt shift right, like it's Stitt's watching." Harlow glanced back. "Mist doesn't swatch, Mac. It only obscures. Keep your men tight." From the rear, Lieutenant James Carrow gave a nervous laugh. "Hell, maybe the Krauts are using the fog as cover. Wouldn't be the first time." His voice carried too loudly, and Harlow motioned for silence. The forest seemed to punish every sound, the echoes stretching unnaturally far. The patrol advanced deeper. The trees grew closer, their black trunks like pillars holding up the ashen sky. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of metal groaning carried faintly, like armor shifting under strain. It faded as soon as Harlow stopped to listen. No birds called, no animals moved. The Ardennes had been pounded flat by shells and frost, but the silence here felt different, too absolute, as though the forest itself were waiting. They moved for another hour, the mist only thickening. Then Private Collins, a young American rifleman, hissed a warning. He pointed at the ground. Tank treads. Fresh impressions, pressed deep into the mud and frost, leading down the slope of a narrow logging road. The tracks looked heavy, unmistakable, the kind made by panzers. The men muttered uneasily. Carrow crouched, brushing his glove over the marks. Clear as day. But there sits no engine noise, no exhaust. Mac spat into the mud, and no bloody tree limbs broken where they should sift past, just the tracks. Harlow knelt. The impressions were sharp, not softened by weather. They could not have been more than an hour old, and yet the mist ahead was as empty as before. He stood, his jaw tightening, eyes open. If armor came through here, we still find it. The patrol followed the road, boots crunching in eerie rhythm. Harlow kept his hand near his sidearm, though it would do little against tanks. The unease gnawed at him. Tanks didn't just vanish. If the tracks were real, there had to be a machine nearby. But as they walked, the fog thickened into walls. The men's outlines blurred, voices seemed to stretch, delayed, as if they spoke in vast halls rather than a forest. Twice Harlow halted, convinced he heard engines idling beyond the mist, only for the sound to die. At last, they reached a ridge where the road widened. The tracks continued forward, then stopped. Not faded, not turned off. Stopped. The ground ahead lay untouched, pristine snow. The heavy tread marks ended abruptly, as though the tanks had marched into the air and vanished. The patrol stared in silence. Carrow swore under his breath. Mac clutched the small crucifix he wore on a chain. Harlow forced himself to speak, though his throat was tight. They turned off. Somewhere we missed it. We shall sweep in a widening arc. But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. The tracks had ended clean, like the machines had ceased to exist. The mist pressed closer. From far away, or perhaps from nowhere, came the faint rumble of engines, deep, resonant, yet distant, like thunder buried beneath the earth. Private Collins whispered, "Sir, what if they weren't set here at all?" Harlow did not answer. His eyes scanned the void ahead, his soldier's discipline warring with the chill crawling up his spine. For the first time in his career, Captain Richard Harlow wondered if there were things in war that could not be explained by steel or strategy. The mist shifted, curling like smoke over unseen shapes. The forest held its breath. And somewhere in that grey curtain something moved. The fog did not lift with the day. It thickened, settling into the timber like damp wool. Harlow ordered a staggered sweep off the logging road, each man moving 5 paces apart, pistols and rifles held low to keep muzzles dry. Their world shrank to a few yards of greyed bark and frost-glazed underbrush. "Keep your spacing," Harlow murmured, voice barely above a breath. "Caro with me. Mac, take the left file." They combed the slope where the tread marks simply ceased. Harlow knelt again, tracing the last crisp ridge of chevron steel in the earth. It was impossible, like a sentence cut mid-word. The ground beyond was a page left blank. Maxet's whisper floated from the left. "Sir, over here." They converged on a shallow depression between 2 firs. In the half-frozen muck lay the glint of broken glass, a periscope mirror. Harlow lifted it carefully with a handkerchief. The edges were fresh sheared, not weathered, the surface flecked with frost and oil haze. Caro crouched close, eyes bright, German, from a Panzer IV cupola maybe. "My uncle had a garage, saw a lot of glass like that, but where sips the rest of it?" Max's gaze roamed the trees. If a periscope stis snapped, the turret took a hit, or rolled, but there stis no gouge, no scarring. "Bag it," Harlow said. "Tag the spot on the map." He stood, feeling the ground through his boots, listening. A tremor seemed to ripple in the soil and vanish. Memory? Nerves? He wasn't sure. The sweep continued. They found another curiosity. A half-moon of scorched earth, no bigger than a dinner plate, the needles around it charred to lace. Not a shell crater, not a burn pit, just a perfect, inexplicable scorch. A few yards on, Collins waved them over to a ring of crushed ferns shaped like a man had lain there, but there were no footprints leading in or out. "Maybe they doubled back on their own tracks," Caro suggested, though doubt bled through his voice. "Maybe," Harlow said. He didn't believe it. They looped back to the road. The tread marks remained plain, indifferent, ending in a sharp line. Harlow stared until his eyes watered, searching for turn-off ruts, snow scuff, any clue. Nothing. The woods exhaled a cold breath that tasted faintly of oil. A sound rose, metal on metal, light at first, then clearer, the soft periodic clatter of track links kissing idlers. A turret sip's slow grind. Caro stiffened, grin sharpening with adrenaline. "Hear that?" "I hear it," Harlow said. "Spread. Cover." The patrol dropped to knees, rifles braced on stumps, Thompsons leveled. Harlow peered through the mist, aligning himself on the road's ghostly centerline. He lifted a hand, held it, then chopped it down. "Stand by. Piat ready," Mac hissed to the 2-man team who knelt trembling over the spring-loaded tube. The sound grew near enough to taste. A wash of imagined exhaust, the faintest shimmer on the fog. Harlow's thumb slid the safety off his Webley. He could make out a darker block in the grey shape of a glacis plate, the blunt snout of a panzer moving dead toward them. "Hold. Hold." The block swam closer, resolving into the angles his brain recognized as armor. Harlow Sip's body decided before his mind did. "PIT, fire." The spring barked. The bomb traced a wobbly arc and vanished into the fog stuff of the oncoming shape. A heartbeat later, nothing. No explosion, no clang, no scream of impact. The fog rippled like a curtain teased by wind. The sound of tracks faltered, resumed, faded. Reload, reload, Maxit's voice cracked. But there was nothing to aim at. The darker mass dissolved back into uniform grey. The road lay empty. The tread mark still ended at that same sharp line, unimpressed by the attempt to kill a thing that might never have been alive. Collins whispered, "It was there. I saw it." Caro panted a laugh that wasn't sit. Laughter. Shell passed clean through, like it wasn't sit properly there. Harlow swallowed the shiver rising through him. Ceasefire. We stir, not wasting bombs on weather. He hated the way the word sounded. Weather. He holstered the Webley with deliberate calm. We fall back to hard cover and think like soldiers, not ghost chasers. They withdrew off the road to an old timber cutting with low berms, better fields of fire, backs to a slope. The fog thinned here to translucent veils. The men sipped tea gone metallic in their mess tins, hands shaking more from nerves than the cold. Mac sat beside Harlow, eyes on the logging road. "Sir, permission to speak freely." "Granted. Has worked steel my whole life. Ships, motors, things leave marks. Even the things that fail. Out there," he jutted his chin toward the road. "It sits like a story somebody told who sits never seen a machine." Harlow didn't answer. A distant engine throbbed once more and went silent, as if it had been listening in and decided to stop breathing. He took out the field radio, cranked. Static washed his ear. A German phrase cut through for a second. Orders barked, clipped, formal, then British traffic again. He swallowed. "Sunray, this is Reed 3. Possible enemy armor at grid." He gave the reference, measuring each syllable against the crawling of his skin. "Request artillery. Harassing fire on the valley approaches." The reply came. Cheerful. Distant. "Reed 3. Sunray. Copy grid. Fire mission queued. Over." Harlow lowered the handset and looked at his men. "We still bring the real guns to bear." He tried to smile. A commander Sipth's trick he stet perfected. Whatever Sips out there wants Sip fancy a proper barrage. Caro Sit's gaze stayed on the line where the tracks ended. What if that Sips? Exactly what they want. Harlow didn't ask who they were. He set the radio down and every man turned as the fog along the road folded inward, like something the size of a tank had just breathed in. The barrage came quarter of an hour later. Dull thuds from far batteries, then the sky above the valley pulsed white. Sound lagged and swelled. The forest shivered under invisible weight. Snow sifted from branches in thin curtains. "Walk it forward," Harlow muttered to the handset as the observer relayed corrections. "Left 50. Add 100. Fire for effect." The woods answered with a rolling growl. Downslope, blossoms of churned earth flared and sank, brief suns inside the fog. The men cheered in reflex. Artillery civilized fear. It put numbers and ranges to the unknown. When the last shell fell, silence climbed back out of the craters. The fog closed over the valley like unbroken skin. Harlow sent Mac and Collins to scout the near edge. They returned minutes later, both paled beneath their grime. "Sir," Mac said softly, "you sipped better see." They led him to the first crater. The lip was neat, the torn loam still steaming, but inside the bowl sat a thing that made Harlow's breath stop. No, not sat, hovered. A line of track marks arced through the crater without touching it, as though a heavy machine had passed, weightless, inches above the blast, imprinting the rim and vanishing over the far side. Caro Sip's voice dried in his throat. "That Sip's not possible." "Possible or not," Harlow said. "There it is." He stepped closer, forcing logic to frame the sight. The tracks maintained perfect spacing, no splay from weight transfer, no slump where a bogey would dip. A child's drawing across a tear in the page. A hum rose too low for ears but undeniable. Harlow felt it in his molars first. A faraway grinding. The fog on the road thickened, bulging toward them, as if pushed from behind. "Positions," he snapped. Men dove to their berms, weapon barrels steadying on quivering hands. The hum separated into the overlapping music of engines, gearboxes, tracks, an entire column. Shapes congealed in the whiteness. The lead silhouette took on angles, edges, sloped glacis, square turret. The Balkan crows ghosted pale on its flank. A Panzer IV, clear as doctrine, rolling dead at them. Behind it, more masses stacked in depth, half-tracks, maybe a panther farther back, its long gun jutting like a spear in cloud. "Hold fire," Harlow ordered, every instinct screaming the opposite. "Wait for contact." The Panzer's bow machine gun winked, no tracers, just a shimmer, but the fur trunk inches from Harlow's face erupted in splinters that showered his cheeks. Men cried out. Something had force. Something had teeth. "Return fire." Rifles cracked. Thompsons stuttered. Bullets stitched the fog. No sparks, no clangs, yet the Panzer's outline stuttered as if struck, then corrected with a lazy arrogance. The turret traversed. The main gun recoiled without flash or report. A shell screamed through the berm between two men and carved a clean tube through earth that collapsed with a sigh. No shrapnel, a perfect absence. Collins sobbed, fired again and again, each round snatched by the grey. Caro crawled to the Piat, shoulders squared against terror. "Load me!" He slammed the bomb in, yanked the trigger. The spring gave its ugly bark. Fog rippled where the bomb should have hit steel. The Panzer glided on, immutable. Mac bellowed. "Down!" The machine's snout nosed the berm, passed through it, soil rising and settling as if a whale had slid beneath the surface. Its bow wave was cold. The turret shadowed over Harlow for a second. His reflection swam in glass that was not glass, a warped vision of a captain already dead. A figure appeared in the cupola, helmeted, goggles down. The commander turned, shouted a command Harlow felt in his bones rather than heard. It vibrated the air in a way that tasted of copper. Grenades, smoke, everything. Harlow threw a phosphorus grenade at the Panzer's flank. The canister burst into hungry white snakes that hissed and clawed up the shape. Where smoke touched armor, the outline fled, tearing open to show the trees beyond. For a heartbeat, the Panzer's side was a hole cut in the world. "See that?" Caro yelled, exhilaration and horror braided tight. "It hates the light." The commander's shade turned. For an instant Harlow glimpsed a face beneath the goggles, slick with oil, features ruined by fire and resignation. The mouth formed a word he knew from 100 intercepted signals. "Whiter, continue." The column rolled through the patrol's position, through the men, through their berms and bodies like a winter river, through reeds. Cold lapped Harlow's legs. A hatch edge kissed his thigh with a pressure that wasn't pressure, and left frost where it passed. Men flinched and cried out from pain that left no wound. Then they were gone, out the far side, into the timber, silhouettes elongating, thinning, returning to formless fog. The hum dwindled. The forest remembered itself in creaks and drips. Collins stared at his hands. "They went right through me." He sounded 5 years old. Harlow forced breath into his lungs. "Check for injuries. Ammunition count. Repack. We're not broken." He lied with a commander's grace. Inside, a crack widened. Caro Sip's eyes shone with wetness. He didn't bother to wipe. "Sir, if they can pass through us, why could they splinter that tree? Why could we feel the gun?" Harlow had no answer. He listened to the quiet. Under it, faint as memory, a voice of metal spoke from deep in the valley, repeating the word he had seen mouthed, "Whiter." He closed the map case with hands that trembled once and stilled. "We follow," he said. "We learn what they are." The fog ahead drew itself into a long corridor, inviting, inevitable. A line of tread marks waited at its mouth, fresh, deep, ending 10 paces in, like the first footprints of a man who never finished crossing a room. Night descended without ceremony, swallowed in the fog's grey belly. No sunset, no stars, no moon, just the deepening of an already colorless world. The patrol made camp in the skeleton of a ruined farmhouse, its roof sheared away by shells long before, its walls blackened and skeletal. A stove squatted in one corner, rusted and useless. Harlow ordered minimal light. They huddled behind collapsed stonework, whispering over tins of cold rations. Breath steamed in the air like fleeting ghosts. "Sir," Mac muttered, chewing with slow disgust. This place reeks of bad ground. You can feel it, like we sir squatting in somebody else's coffin. Eat, Sergeant, Harlow said, though he agreed. His skin prickled as if the walls leaned closer. Caro grinned too wide for the mood, trying to lift the men. What's the matter? Bog got you spooked. Germans got clever tricks, sure, but they still bleed. No one laughed. The fog seeped through the farmhouse cracks, curling along the floorboards. Collins swore softly and pulled his blanket higher, muttering about engines he could hear in his teeth. Harlow dismissed it, until he heard it too. Not engines exactly. Voices. German. He froze, gesturing the men to silence. The words drifted faint but crisp, as if carried down a long tunnel. Laws, vorwärts, halt den Kurs. Orders, the kind he'd heard 100 times over radios and prisoner interrogations, shouted by throats no longer here. Caro's face gleamed pale in the gloom. They're close, real close. He gripped his Thompson tight, finger twitching near the trigger. Hold, Harlow warned. He strained his ears. The cadence wasn't right. Voices overlapped, repeated. One bark of Achtung echoed 3 times, staggered like a record skipping. The sound swelled, then thinned, then swelled again. The clank of track links joined, the scrape of steel teeth, the hiss of hydraulics, but muted, as if wrapped in cloth. It surrounded them, directionless. Mac pressed his palms over his ears. That sip's not noise made by men. That sip's the dead remembering themselves. Harlow's jaw clenched. His rational mind clawed for explanations, echoes, trick of mist, imagination primed by fear. But his gut said otherwise. Collins whimpered. They sit outside. No movement, Harlow snapped. He risked a glance over the broken wall. The fog was thick as wool. No silhouettes, no muzzle flash, no shadows. And yet the voices carried closer, words rattling the air against his ribs. Caro licked his lips. Maybe they sis marching. A whole company, in step. If we slip out, shadow them, we still do nothing of the sort. Harlow cut in sharply. We stay put until dawn. Fog once set, cover them forever. But he knew dawn had little to do with it. The sounds shifted. Not outside, now inside. From the far corner of the ruined room came the faint scrape of boots on wood. Then the soft rattle of a hatch closing. Then metal on metal. Precise, deliberate. The men turned as one, rifles trembling toward the empty corner. The fog there thickened, coiling up the wall. Caro Sip's teeth chattered though he grinned. Still. They sips here, unsip they, inside the bloody house. Maxit's crucifix gleamed as he clutched it. Jesu, keep me. Harlow forced calm. They can't hurt us if they're not real. Even as he spoke, he doubted it. He'd seen trees splintered by phantom guns. The whispers grew distinct. Fragments of prayer, of curses, of radio checks. A guttural laugh cut off mid-note. Then silence. The fog retreated, sound with it. The farmhouse settled into stillness so complete that the men hardly dared breathe. Harlow finally exhaled. Double sentries, 2-hour shifts, no one alone. He tried to steady his tone, but it shook, despite him. Caro leaned close as they unrolled blankets. His whisper smelled of tinned meat. Sir, you felt it too, didn't you? They weren't sit outside. They were among us. Harlow didn't answer. He lay back on the frozen ground, staring into the void above where stars should have been. Sleep did not come easy. Each time his eyes closed, he heard the voice again, the one from the phantom commander in the Panzer's cupola, repeating its order in a cadence that lodged in his skull. Weiter, continue. At some point, he must have dozed, for when he woke, the fog pressed against the walls like hands, and the cold stink of exhaust hung in the air, though no fire had burned all night. They moved at first light, or what passed for it. The fog had a way of dimming the sun to a pale coin pressed behind gauze. Harlow led them along the logging road until the timber thinned, and the ground sagged into a broad, blasted hollow. The smell hit first, wet rust, burned oil, the sour tang of old cordite revived by damp. The hollow was a graveyard, not crosses and stones, steel and bones. Burned-out panzer hulls lay black and buckled, half swallowed by mud and snow. Turrets had blown clean off and sat upside down like kettle lids. The stiff, twisted petals of exploded road wheels poked skyward. A Jagdpanzer's casemate gaped open, its interior a crusted cave of soot. A half-track lay on its side, tracks like snapped necklaces, its rear bed charcoaled around a circle where men must have sat. Mac exhaled a breath that left his chest with a prayer folded inside it. Mother of God. Caro Sip's eyes glittered. So the stories were true. A whole battalion cooked here. He clambered onto the nearest Panzer IV, boots ringing dully on the scorched plate. Airstrike, looks like. See the spall marks. The Tiger Sip's teeth on the metal. Harlow didn't need convincing. The pattern was textbook. Clustered craters, shock-warped armor, the peculiar tidy destruction that only a well-placed bomb run could deliver. He crouched near a turret ring, tracing a ragged seam with numb fingers. Threads of fused steel caught the light like frost. RAF or USAAF. Precision, fast. He paused, fingers coming away black. And final. Collins edged around a hull, swallowing hard as he peered through a machine gun port. Any bodies, sir? Eyes sharp, Harlow said. No scavenging. We're here to look, not to take. His tone hid a relief he hated himself for. Frozen corpses he could manage. Whatever had marched through them yesterday he could not. They fanned through the wrecks. The ground was webbed by runoff channels of old oil. Here and there winter had preserved pools like amber dark as night. The trees ringing the hollow were scarred to sapwood on their upslope faces, a frozen record of heat that had run like a tide. Sir, Mac called, found something. Inside the half-track's belly, protected from weather, lay a metal dispatch case fused shut. Mac's wrench pried and swore, until the lid squealed back. Paper within, edges crisp, ink ghost pale. Harlow lifted a sheaf with reverence. Field orders, German, typed, rubber-stamped. The masthead, Panzer Battalion 332. Date late 1944. Movement orders through this very valley. Caro leaned over his shoulder. Battalion 332, he murmured. Not on our maps. They were real, Harlow said softly, hands steadying as the solid world asserted itself. These tanks fought. These men died. He flipped deeper into the packet. A final page, quarter burned, caught his eye. A list of crew rosters, names, ages, besides several. Vermissed, missing, not killed, not buried, just gone. A soft clink skittered across the metal floor. Collins had knocked something, a small brass disc, blackened, stamped with a blood group and a serial. Harlow turned it with a gloved finger. A dog tag, German style, Erkennungsmark, split to be shared between grave and record. This one was intact. No grave had taken its half. Mac made a sign without thinking. No rights, he whispered. No home. A wind threaded the hollow then, though no branches moved. It carried with it a murmur, the sound of men at work, the mundane hum of maintenance, the slap of a rag on steel, clink of a wrench, a distant chuckle at a joke none of them would ever hear. The fog thickened from the edges inward. Harlow looked up, senses flaring. On the upslope, between spruce trunks, shapes stood at attention. Not men, suggestions of men. Helmets resting where heads should be, straps hanging in air, greatcoats filled by weather rather than flesh. He blinked. The forms softened, slid apart, became mist again. Back to the road, he said. And even to his own ears he sounded like a man trying to speak above a tide. Slowly, no stumbling. They withdrew through the carcasses. Caro lingered atop the Panzer, palm flat on the scorched turret, as if listening through the metal. They didn't seek, no, he said. 1 minute alive, the next. He snapped his fingers. A brittle sound swallowed by fog, cut out of the film. Lieutenant, Harlow warned. Down. Caro hopped off, landing beside a turret ring. His boot slid on oil, and he grabbed the barrel to steady himself. For a heartbeat, everything around them tightened. The fog, the air, the very light, and a sound rose from the Panzer's open hatch, like breath from a chest returning to life. A slow intake. Mac yanked Caro away, hard. Don't sit touch what wants to be left. The intake became a hiss. The hiss became a word. It crawled up through the wrecks, through the trees, through the men's boots into their bones. Wheater. The dog tag in Harlow's gloved hand grew so cold it burned. He dropped it with a curse. It rang on the armored deck with a bright, living note that should not have existed in this dead place. Behind them something moved inside the Jagdpanzer. Not a figure, an idea of a figure. The hatch yawned a fraction wider, though no hand touched it. "Out," Harlow ordered, voice raw. Now. They broke into a careful trot, packs thumping, eyes fixed on the road's promise of line of sight and retreat. The Hollow watched them go with the patient attention of a place that had learned to keep its inhabitants. At the lip, Caro glanced back. In the fog, the wrecks seemed to rearrange themselves into order of march, turrets aligning as if for parade. He blinked, and the illusion dissolved into scattered hulks again. The wind, or the memory of wind, breathed once more, whiter, and from somewhere low and near, a track link clinked against an idler in a rhythm no living hand kept. Caro didn't sleep that night. He scribbled in his pocket notebook by the trembling light of a shielded torch, the pencil jittering as if taken by a mild palsy. Names from the roster he'd seen, Bauer, Clemens, Vogue, lined the page, each paired with a question mark. Across the bottom, in larger hand, "They want to finish the march." Harlow found him at the edge of the ruined farmhouse, staring into fog so dense it looked poured. "Lieutenant," Harlow said softly, "you stir off watch." Caro Zeps's grin was too quick. "Can a stit sleep?" "They sits are out there, sir." "You heard it again, thithit. They sits are still taking orders. We could give them different ones." "Ghosts don't take orders," Harlow said, more tired than stern. "Everything soldiers do is habit." Caro pressed. "What if that's all that's left? Habits stuck to the world like fingerprints. If we find the right words, the right signal, we could steer them away from our lines, away from anyone." He leaned in, the whites of his eyes showing. "We could end it." Harlow studied him. Beneath the bravado lay terror looking for a handle. He seen men reach for ritual in chaos. Left boot first, coin in the pocket, kiss the Stenset's receiver before a raid. Caro Sip's ritual was theory. "You selt rest," Harlow said. "That Sip's an order." Caro nodded, obedient as a boy, and did not move. By morning the fog had thinned to a high gauze. For the first time in days, pale sunlight filtered through, making the frost glitter. The men looked 10 years younger for the light alone. Harlow took advantage, setting a brisk pace along a ridge path that gave views, if that was the word, over the valley. Every time the ground fell away, the fog pooled like milk in a bowl. "Objective?" Mac asked quietly, boots steady, rifle snug to his shoulder as if it were a friend. "We follow their axis," Harlow said. "If these manifestations are echoes of Abteilung 332, then somewhere ahead is where they were trying to get." He didn't add, "and maybe if we understand that, we can untie it." Caro walked point with unusual care, stopping often to press fingers to the ground, to sniff the air like a hunting dog. He froze at one bend, head cocked. "Hear that?" They all did. A series of clipped radio bursts, German procedure words, a reply in a different timbre. Caro Sip's hand went to his own radio. "If I match their net, if I mimic the call signs." "No." Harlow Sip's palm settled on the set. Firm. "We don't invite something into our frequency." "They're already on it," Caro said, and Harlow couldn't contradict him. Static crawled under their dialogue like ants. They reached a saddle between hills where trees had been cleared long ago. In the open space, snow bore the stamp of many boots. Recent, human. Harlow dropped to one knee, Allied patrol by the look, ammo boots, British hobnails. Another set, softer tread, American. He frowned. The tracks crossed and recrossed, then veered toward the valley, A drag mark appeared near the end, as if a man had limped or been pulled. Max's breath plumed. Others came looking. Or running, Harlow said. He regarded the drag, the scattered cartridge casings gleaming like seeds. We keep our heads. They followed the human sign to a small ravine choked with brush. A helmet lay upside down in a notch, snow cupped inside it. Stenciled letters, LCPL Heart. Collins swallowed. Heart sips in C Company. 506th. We bivouacked near them last week. Harlow's face tightened. No bodies, he said. No blood. He didn't voice the fear. The ravine felt wrong in the way a mouth feels wrong when a tooth has been pulled. Vacant, tender, waiting to be filled again. Caro moved ahead despite Harlow Sit's hand on his sleeve. If they searched following the old road, the battalion would swing left at the mill. He pointed through the trees where a broken roofline showed. If we get there before dusk, we can. We can what? Mac demanded. Wariness made him blunt. Shout at mist. Signal, Caro said fiercely. Light, noise, phosphorus. Remember how it tore a gap? If we lay it right, we can herd them. He laughed, a strained, excited sound. It sets just armored cattle, sir. Harlow considered the mill. He pictured the phantom line rolling through, felt again the cold pressure as it passed, heard the order repeat like a ritual. We settle recon, he said finally. No heroics. Dusk came fast as they approached the mill, a stone rectangle with a collapsed wheel jutting into the stream like a broken rib. The water itself seemed reluctant to move, slipping under plates of ice with a reluctance that matched Harlow's own. They posted up in the loft, sightlines over the old road. Caro unpacked phosphorus grenades with the tenderness of a man arranging candles on an altar. He strung a line of flares as if stitching light across the darkness. Mac worked beside him, jaw set. You steer ghosts into what, Lieutenant? A barn? A hole? Back to bed? Out of the world, Caro whispered. Or at least away from us. The first engine Hume trembled, the rafters just after full dark. The road below filled with a faint moving absence, like black water flowing uphill. Caro's hands shook as he thumbed a lighter. On my mark, he breathed. We show them a lane and they'll take it. Tanks follow lanes as surely as sheep follow fences. Harlow Sit's voice was low, iron. If they turn toward us, we drop and we run. Caro nodded, eyes huge. Mark. He snapped the lighter. Flame flowered. He touched it to the first flare. Light tore a clean wound in the fog. The road answered with motion, shapes aligning, the pale cross on a flank sliding into definition. A cupola lifted like a periscope through sea spray. The commander's ruined face tilted, recognizing the light as if it were a star used to navigate a hated ocean. Caro grinned, victorious. That sips it. Come on, boys. Take the lane. The head turned, slowly, not to the gap of light, but to the loft where Caro knelt with his altar of fire. The ruined mouth shaped a new word. Not waiter. Kiran. Turn back. Every shadow in the road pivoted like cavalry wheeling on command. The column's snout swung toward the mill. Harlow's stomach dropped through the boards. Down, he shouted, already dragging Caro away from the window as the first ghost plate slid into the wall like a blade into cloth. The mill shook, but not like from a shell strike. No blast, no roar, just the trembling of matter itself. As the phantom battalion turned its impossible weight against the walls, boards shivered loose from their nails. Rafters groaned like old bones. Harlow hit the floor hard, dragging Caro beside him, Macduff against the opposite wall, covering Collins with his bulk as dust rained in grey curtains. Positions, Harlow barked, though his own hands trembled as he raised the Webley. The wall to the road bulged inward. Cold swept through the cracks, the kind that went bone deep in a breath. The shape of a panzer's snout pressed through like a whale surfacing beneath thin ice. Its barrel entered the room solid in appearance, yet its edge rippled half there, half dream. Caro screamed, not from fear but from exhilaration. It sees us. He fumbled with a phosphorus grenade, lighter flaring. Don't. Harlow started, but the fuse caught. White fire hissed, filling the room with the stink of burning chemicals. The Panzer's turret ghosted back a fraction, as if flinching. The fog inside the room peeled open like skin scorched by salt. But the reprieve lasted only a second. Another shape slammed the opposite wall, a half-track this time. Its bed passed through the stones like a shadow over water. Men cried out as the air compressed with the phantom mass. Splinters flew where nothing touched, welts rising on faces as if struck by invisible fists. Collins clutched his helmet, shrieking, "It's in my head." His eyes rolled white. Mac pinned him down, shouting prayers and curses in the same breath. Harlow staggered to the window slit. Outside, the road swarmed with armor outlines, dozens deep, no tracks, no wheels, just the suggestion of both, rolling over ground that did not protest. Their movement made no sound, yet the silence hammered louder than any barrage. He pulled the radio to his lips. "Read 3 to Sunray. Fire mission. Immediate. Target." Static howled. For a moment, it wasn't static at all, but the layered babble of German orders. "Los. Feuer frei. Weiter." His own voice cut out. "Sir!" Caro cried. He leaned halfway through the window, shouting into the column. "I can talk to them." They sit, listening. "Get back." Harlow yanked him down. The young officer twisted in his grasp, eyes wild. "You don't understand. They are trying to finish the march. If we give them new orders." A shadow passed over them. The Panzer's cupola hovered outside the loft, face angled in. The commander's ruined features swam in fog like a corpse beneath ice. His goggles locked onto Caro. Caro froze, then smiled, weeping. "He knows me." The commander raised a hand. The gesture was precise, unmistakable. Forward. The battalion moved again. The mill shuddered as the shapes poured through it. Floorboards buckled, frost crackling along beams, as though the building aged 100 years in seconds. The men were thrown against walls, through furniture, into each other, yet still no sound. Not a crash, not a roar. The silent attack pressed its terror deeper by the absence of noise. Collins convulsed, clutching his chest as if a shell had burst inside him. Mac slapped him, shouted, dragged him toward the door. "Out! We've got to get out!" Harlow grabbed Caro Sip's collar. "Move!" But Caro resisted, transfixed. "They want me with them. Donset, you see." They settle, listen. The cupola loomed closer. The commander's face opened into a grin that was not human. Teeth black, lips torn. His voice cut into the room without passing air. "Weiter." Caro's body jerked, as though the word itself had snared him. His eyes rolled back, his lips moving soundlessly, echoing the order. The commander's hand closed into a fist. Caro screamed once, then was yanked forward, not bodily, but as if his outline had been pulled from him. His form flickered, then slid through the window into the fog. "Jimmy!" Harlow bellowed, lunging after him. His fingers scraped empty air. The lieutenant was gone, swallowed into the line of armor as though he had always belonged. The battalion moved on, shapes dissolving one by one as they passed. The mill sagged, groaning. Beams fell. The roof collapsed in slow surrender. Mac hauled Collins out through a side gap, shouting for Harlow. Harlow stumbled after them, coughing on phosphorus smoke and dust. They spilled into the snow, gasping, watching as the battalion's shadows faded into the valley mist. Only one sound remained, the faint tick of Caro's lighter, lying in the snow, still sparking. Harlow picked it up with a hand that shook so badly he nearly dropped it again. The metal was ice-cold, though the flame had just burned. From the fog came one last whisper, not shouted, not ordered, intimate, "Weiter." And then the night was silent again. By dawn the mill was nothing but a blackened ruin behind them. Its stones sagged like rotted teeth. Timbers collapsed in heaps that steamed faintly in the cold. Harlow, Mac, and Collins trudged along the ridge trail, silent, exhausted, each carrying the absence of Caro heavier than any pack. The fog had thinned, but not enough to show the sky. It pooled low in the valleys like a tide, unwilling to retreat. Harlow carried Caro's lighter in his breast pocket. He could feel it there, cold against his chest, like a foreign heartbeat. Collins broke the silence first. His voice was cracked. "Lieutenant, he didn't scream, sir. Not really. He went quiet. Like he wanted it." Mac grunted. He was already gone the moment he started listening south to them voices. He spat into the snow. "Ghosts promise things a man wants to hear. That sips how they keep ye." Harlow said nothing, but in his head, Caro's last smile replayed, eyes lit as if he'd glimpsed purpose rather than terror. They made camp in a shallow ravine sheltered from the wind. Harlow unfolded the captured dispatches from Abteilung 332. He traced the faded German words by lantern light, translating in murmurs for Mac and Collins. "Panzer Battalion 332, he said, ordered to hold this valley as part of the Ardennes thrust. Lost contact, December Seps 44. Not listed in Allied records, not even noted as destroyed." He tapped a burned corner. "Just erased." Collins shivered. Maybe because nobody found them. Just ghosts now. Mac shook his head. No army erases a battalion unless it's easier than explaining its deaths. Some things, they bury. Harlow continued reading. One page stood out. A typed situation report. It described Allied bombers striking the column at night, bombs falling blind in fog. Coordinates matched the symmetry of steel they'd seen. The report ended with a final line. "Weiter marschier and trotz Verlust. Continue marching despite losses." "That was their last order," Harlow whispered. He felt the cold crawl deeper into his bones. "That sips why they keep moving. It was burned into them." Mac rubbed his face with both hands. "So they sit march and sit still, through fog, through us, through anything that stands in the way." "Not men," Collins muttered. "Not tanks. Just memory. A loop." Harlow folded the papers, stowing them carefully. "A loop doesn't kill trees, or throw men around like ragdolls." His voice sharpened. "We saw splinters. We felt concussions. This isn't set, just echoes." Mac looked at him sidelong. "Then what is it, sir?" Harlow didn't answer. His mind clawed at explanations, residual energy, atmospheric tricks, some new German weapon. But his soldier's instinct told him the truth. This was death refusing to finish its work. That night, the dreams came. Harlow stood in a crater, the wrecks around him lined up neatly, turrets pointing east. Caro was among them, standing at the cupola of a Panzer Thor, his face smeared with oil. He saluted Harlow. His mouth moved, but no sound came. Behind him, the commander turned his ruined grin toward Harlow and spoke in that voice that bypassed the air waiter. Harlow woke choking, fists clenched, lighter burning cold against his chest. The next day, they pushed deeper into the valley. Signs of the battalion's passage reappeared, tread marks pressed sharp into the frost, ending and beginning without logic. In one place, an entire line of trees leaned outward as though shoved aside by mass that hadn't touched them. In another, a farmhouse lay collapsed with no scorch marks, as though something vast had simply walked through its center and kept going. Collins stopped in the road, voice breaking. "We can fight this, sir. We can sit." Harlow steadied him with a hand. "We don't have to fight it. We just have to understand it." But as he said it, the fog stirred ahead. The distant rumble of engines swelled again, layered and endless. Mac cursed under his breath. "They come in sight." The road narrowed between steep hillsides, perfect terrain for an ambush if their enemy had been flesh. Instead, it became a corridor of dread. Shapes appeared. Tanks, half-tracks, shadows of steel and willpower that refused to die. At the head, a Panzer IV rolled silently, cupola open, commander watching with blind, ruined eyes. And in the second tank's turret, a new figure stood, Caro. His face was pale, eyes shining with the same awe-struck madness they seen the night before. His mouth opened, and in perfect German his voice carried clear as a bell. "Weiter." The battalion obeyed. The valley closed in like the throat of a beast. High ridges leaned over the road, their crowns of firs bent low as though listening. Fog spilled between them, thick and wet, seeping into uniforms, into lungs, into thought. Harlow, Mac, and Collins pressed themselves against the ditch as the first shapes rolled past. No roar of engines, no clatter of treads, only silence, broken by the faint crunch of frost under boots that weren't really there. The column moved with terrifying precision. Tanks ghosted forward in single file, cupolas swiveling, antenna vibrating in fog. Men clung to half-tracks, shadows of men, outlines filled with mist, faces blank as frost-slick windows. And there, second turret from the lead, stood Lieutenant James Carrow. He looked alive, too alive. His cheeks flushed, eyes bright, hands braced on the cupola rim, as if he had been born to command steel. He raised an arm, and the battalion halted in unison. Collins whimpered, "He sees us." Carrow turned. His gaze found them through the mist, cutting like a searchlight. A smile spread across his face. Beatiff, welcoming. He gestured, a commander calling his men to rise. "Don't move," Harlow hissed, though every nerve screamed to run. Carrow Sip's voice rang clear, not muffled, not ghosted. It was his voice, but deeper, layered, carried on frequencies the ear could barely hold. "Come with us, Captain. It sips not fear, it sips freedom. No hunger, no fatigue, just the march." Mac spat, fury shaking his words. "You star no soldier, Carrow. You star a bleeding-istic echo." Carrow's grin widened. Echoes last longer than flesh. He turned to the commander beside him, the ruined spectre with goggles slicked in oil. They exchanged a look, an understanding. Then Carrow raised his hand high. The battalion roared forward, not in sound, but in force. The fog surged like a tide. The tanks charged, their mass undeniable. Harlow shoved Collins back up the slope. "Run! Off the road!" They scrambled through brush as the first Panzer cut through the ditch. Frost rimmed Harlow's coat instantly, his skin burning where the phantom hull brushed him. His teeth rattled with the vibration of an engine that wasn't there. Collins screamed. His boot had caught in a root. Harlow wheeled, grabbing at him. A half-track bore down, steel bed loaded with missed soldiers who stared with eyeless helmets. Collins shrieked again as the vehicle passed through him. For a moment, his outline glowed pale. Then he crumpled, body convulsing as if every nerve had been severed. Steam hissed from his lips. "Collins!" Harlow knelt, shaking him, but the boy's eyes rolled white. Breath came in thin whines, chest jerking with phantom impacts. The dog tag at his neck turned black as soot. Mac yanked Harlow back. "Leave him. It's Dex taken, seek him." "No." Harlow snarled, refusing. He dragged Collins into the brush, away from the road, but Collins was slack, his skin frost-bitten where no ice touched. His mouth moved, forming a single word, "Wheater." Then he stilled. Harlow's breath caught in his throat. He pressed his hand against the boy's chest. But there was no heartbeat, only a faint vibration, as though an engine turned somewhere deep inside. Mac swore, voice breaking. They sef taken him same as Carrow. The battalion thundered on, shapes dissolving into the fog. But Harlow knew they weren't gone. They had grown stronger, feeding on men, drawing them in. The mist thickened, coiling around the ravine, dragging at boots and breath alike. Harlow staggered, nearly falling. Mac hauled him upright, his face twisted in desperation. "We siv got to get out of this cursed valley, sir, or it'll have us both." But Harlow's eyes locked on the retreating column. At its rear, he swore he saw Collins now standing in the bed of a half-track, helmet crooked, eyes shining faintly, already lost, already marching. The ground beneath them trembled, not with real mass, but with the memory of it, pounding in eternal rhythm. The fog pulled tighter, pressing against skin like water closing over a drowning man. Harlow clutched the cold lighter in his pocket, knuckles white. Carrow's voice whispered inside his skull, "You can join us. You can march forever. No more fear." "Captain!" Mac roared, shaking him. "We sef got to move." Harlow tore his gaze from the phantoms, from the figures of his men now swallowed by the column. His throat burned as he rasped, "Run." They stumbled into the trees. fog chasing like an endless tide. Behind them, the battalion's command rang once more, layered voices repeating the same word until it was no longer language but law. Wheater. The fog consumed the valley, and with it, the last of Harlow's hope that this was anything but real. The forest tilted with every step, or so it felt. Harlow and Mac stumbled through the trees, branches whipping their faces, boots breaking crusted snow. Behind them, the Phantom Battalion marched without haste, yet always closing, their silence heavier than artillery fire. Everywhere the fog followed, spilling between trunks, thickening the air. It wasn't mist anymore, it was presence, breathing, watching. Harlow's lungs burned. His hand kept reaching for the pocket where Caro's lighter pressed cold against his chest. Each time he touched it, whispers crawled up his arm. Wheater, Whiter. The voices layered into a rhythm with his heartbeat until he could barely tell them apart. Mac stumbled beside him, dragging his rifle like dead weight. This is madness. We set to run and set from bloody ghosts. He spat into the snow. Can set even shoot what set's not there? They're there, Harlow said, voice hoarse. Too damn real. He remembered Colin's crumpling, remembered Caro's grin from the turret. The faces of the lost burned like phosphorus behind his eyes. They crested a ridge and dropped into a shallow hollow ringed with pines. Mac collapsed against a trunk, gasping, "Can Sud keep on like this? They shall bleed us out with Runninsep." Harlow knew he was right. The battalion didn't need to sprint, it only needed to march endlessly until the living wore down and joined its ranks. The whisper came again, closer now. Harlow pressed his hands over his ears. It didn't matter. The voice bloomed inside his skull. Mac saw it, saw his captain's sips trembling, and shoved him hard against the tree. "Snap out, oh sit. You sit not go and sit with them. Did you hear me?" Harlow's eyes focused slowly. "They want us to finish the march. They want us dead." Maxit's voice cracked. He gripped Harlow by the shoulders. "Listen to me, sir. We sev one chance. We don't sit fight the battalion. We burn what calls it. The maps, the markers, anything set that tethers them here." Harlow stared at him, at the grim resolve etched into every scar of Maxit's face, "Even if it kills us." "Eh?" Maxit's jaw tightened. Better in the dirt than march in Seft forever in fog. They set to work quickly, hands fumbling with numb urgency. Harlow pulled the dispatches from his pack, the orders of Panzer Battalion 332, the names, the rosters. He felt the cold creeping from the pages, as if the ink itself still belonged to the dead. Mac gathered fallen branches, breaking them into a crude pyre. "Get it lit." Harlow hesitated, staring at the papers. Caro's handwriting scribbled across one page, his frantic notes from the night before. "They want to finish the march." The letters seemed to pulse in the lantern light. Mac growled, snatching the lighter from Harlow's hand. "If you can't, I will." He flicked the wheel. Sparks jumped, flame caught, and he shoved it into the paper. The dispatches curled black, edges glowing orange. The rosters flared, names burning to ash. The fire crackled, real and defiant. The fog recoiled. The whispers rose to a chorus, furious now. "Witter." The ground shook as if hundreds of treads pounded the earth in rage. Shapes swarmed the ridge, tanks looming, half-tracks rolling, mist men surging in grey ranks. Their outlines wavered, disrupted by the fire. Where flame touched smoke, the phantoms thinned, edges unraveling. Mac laughed bitterly. "Hey, you don't set like that, do ye?" He stood over the fire, rifle raised, his body casting a sharp shadow against the blaze. "Come on then. Come through me." The lead panzer broke from the fog, its snout bearing down. Mac fired, bullets ripping into mist, meaningless yet defiant. The turret swung toward him, Harlow's throat locked. "Mac, get back." "No," Mac roared. His eyes glistened in the firelight. "One of us has to stand. Run, Captain. Live to tell it." The panzer plunged forward. Its hull swallowed Mac's figure, frost erupting where they merged. For a moment, he stood inside it, silhouette locked in eternal defiance. Then he was gone. The fire roared higher, as if fed by his sacrifice. The phantoms recoiled, their ranks shuddering, voices breaking into static. For the first time, the word fractured, way. Harlow stumbled back, tears burning his eyes. The hollow blazed, the fog buckled, and in the chaos, he turned and ran. Behind him, the fire sputtered, then flared once more, and Mac's last cry rang out, not of fear, but of triumph. "Not today, you bastards!" The battalion surged to smother him. The fog swallowed the light, and silence fell. Captain Richard Harlow staggered alone through the Ardennes woods, his breath rasped in broken clouds, legs trembling, boots soaked with meltwater and mud. Behind him, the hollow where Mac had made his stand was silent, too silent. The fire was gone. The fog had devoured it, leaving nothing but the memory of his sergeant's last roar. He didn't dare look back. Every step felt stolen. The battalion's presence pressed on his back, a wall of inevitability. He could still hear them, even when the forest itself was quiet. Engines humming low, turrets grinding, boots pacing in endless rhythm. Whiter, whiter. The word pounded like artillery in his skull. Harlow stumbled into a wide valley where the trees opened into bare ground. The landscape was scarred by craters, rusted barbed wire, and half-sunken pillboxes, ruins of a battle long since past. But here the fog gathered in swirls, drifting like smoke from an unseen fire. At the center lay an old German command dugout, half collapsed. Its roof beams jutted at sharp angles, and a rusted radio mast leaned crooked over it. Harlow froze. Something about the place pulled. The fog moved inward, coiling like ropes drawing him down. He knew instinctively this was the heart of it, the place where the battalion's echo was bound. His boots dragged him forward. Inside the dugout, rot and frost clung to the air. Wooden beams sagged. Rusted cans and broken helmets littered the floor. In one corner, a table still stood, warped but recognizable. On it sat a radio set, corroded, silent, yet humming faintly with static that wasn't possible. Harlow approached, breath shallow. The lighter in his pocket grew colder, almost freezing his ribs. He pulled it out and set it on the table. Its metal flickered faintly with an inner light, as if it belonged more to the phantoms than to him. The static sharpened. Through the hiss came a voice, guttural, clipped, distorted by time, yet undeniable. Panzer Battalion 332, Halten. Weiter marschieren, trotz Verlust. Panzer Battalion 332, hold, continue marching despite losses. The last order, spoken again and again, carved into the ether. The ghosts weren't choosing to march, they were obeying. Harlow's knees trembled. He pressed his hands against the table, whispering, "You don't have to. It steps over. The war's done." But the static only hissed louder, the words repeating until they merged with the pounding of phantom engines. Shapes formed in the dugout doorway. Tanks, half-tracks, silhouettes of soldiers. They filled the opening, their bodies vaporous yet oppressive. At their head, Caro stepped forward, eyes burning with unnatural fervor. "Sir," he said, his voice layered with others, "you can still come with us. You can march forever. No more fear, no more end." Harlow shook his head. "Youssef, dead Jimmy. Collins too, all of them. Youssef got to let go." Caro's smile was gentle, terrible. "We never die, Captain. Not if we keep moving." He extended a hand. "Take the lighter. Give the order. Lead us." The weight of command crushed Harlow's chest. For a heartbeat he almost believed it. He had led men all his life. Wasn't this just another column to guide? Another duty to fulfill? His hand hovered over the lighter. Then he saw Mac's face in his mind, grimy, fierce, eyes blazing with defiance. Better in the dirt than marching forever in fog. Harlow closed his fist. "No." He snatched the lighter, thumbed it alive. The flame wavered weak, guttering. He touched it to the radio set. For a moment nothing. Then the static screamed. The fog convulsed, pulling back like a wounded animal. Caro's face twisted, his mouth gaping in a silent howl. The battalion shapes wavered, outlines dissolving. The word thundered once more, fragmented, breaking apart like glass. The dugout exploded with light. The fog shrieked as if 1,000 souls tore free at once. When Harlow staggered outside, the valley lay still. No silhouettes, no engines, just ruins, frost, and silence. The real silence of winter, not the suffocating hush of the dead. His legs nearly gave out, but he forced them forward. Every step away from the dugout felt like tearing free of chains. By dusk, he stumbled into Allied lines, a checkpoint. American MPs raised rifles until they recognized the uniform. They rushed forward, dragging him into the warmth of a dugout, pressing hot tea to his lips, peppering him with questions. Harlow answered none. He sat shivering, staring at the lighter in his hand. It was warm now, ordinary, and yet he could still feel the faintest vibration in his bones, like engines idling, waiting. That night, even among living men, the echoes followed him. When he closed his eyes, he saw Caro at the cupola smiling, and heard the word again, distant but persistent. Wheater. Captain Richard Harlow never told the full story in his official report. He wrote only what command could accept. Enemy armor sighted, no contact, recon patrol reduced, survivors returned. Nothing about phantom battalions, voices in the fog, or men taken without trace. The truth he kept for himself. Nights in the rear were worse than the days. He'd lie awake in his cot, the murmur of other soldiers drifting through canvas walls, and still hear it, the grind of treads, the clipped cadence of German orders, the layered hum of engines rolling just beyond reach. When he closed his eyes, he saw faces. Collins, pale and shaking, whispering Wheater with his last breath. Caro, grinning like a zealot from a turret cupola, eyes burning with devotion to something that wasn't life. And Mac, standing proud over the fire, defiant to the end. They haunted him not as ghosts, but as unfinished men. Men swallowed into a column that would never stop. Harlow often touched the lighter in his pocket. It was warm now, no colder than brass should be, but he knew it was a tether. Some nights when sleep threatened, he swore he heard its faint tick-tick, like flint sparking on its own. He never lit it again. He dared not. War moved on. New battles raged. New headlines replaced old. But in the quiet corners of Europe, rumors persisted. Farmers speaking of tank columns rumbling through mist, Allied convoys reporting radar blips where no machines moved, whole villages waking to tracks in the mud that ended in nothing. Always in the fog. Always moving east. The war would end. Armies would march home, medals pinned, histories written. But the phantom battalion of Panzer Battalion 332 would march forever. Harlow carried that truth like shrapnel. He spoke of it once, years later, in a half-whisper over whiskey to another veteran. The man laughed uneasily, called it nerves, bad dreams. But when Harlow left the bar, he heard it again, distant, faint, rolling down some forgotten road. Wheater. And he knew it hadn't been nerves. It had never been nerves. This was the cursed tale of the Phantom Tank Battalion of World War II, an entire armored column that refused to die, condemned to march forever through fog and ruin. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, because every night I bring you a new horror story from the shadows of war, stories where history bleeds into nightmare and the past refuses to stay buried. Thank you for watching, and remember, some battles never end.